Democratic congressman and ranking member of the House Oversight Committee, Robert Garcia, is threatening former Attorney General Pam Bondi with contempt of Congress after the Justice Department said she'll skip today's scheduled deposition as part of the committee's investigation into Jeffrey Epstein. On social media yesterday, Garcia wrote, "Our bipartisan subpoena was very clear. Pam Bondi is supposed to testify whether she's the AG or not. If she doesn't show up, she will face contempt." The committee subpoenaed Bondi in March before President Trump removed her as Attorney General earlier this month. Less than a week after her dismissal, a spokesperson for the committee said the DOJ indicated she would not comply. Garcia, along with the other Democrats on the panel and Republican Congresswoman Nancy Mace, all argue that since Bondi was subpoenaed by name, she has to appear for the deposition. Last week, Mace told reporters she expects Bondi's deposition to be rescheduled in a timely fashion. Want to bring in Democratic Congressman of Virginia, Suhas Subramaniam. He's a member of the House Oversight Committee. You smirked when I said Mace said she wanted this in a timely fashion. I wonder if it's because conversations are flat. Like, is there still an active line of communications with Bondi and the committee to try to get her to come at a different date?
There's an active conversation on how not to get her in by the chairman and other Republicans on the committee, because the reality is they don't want her coming before the committee and having to be deposed under oath. Remember, after her performance on a judiciary committee, we didn't want her testifying in public and turning that into a clown show like she did last time. So instead, we wanted her deposed under oath like we have many others. And remember, Hillary Clinton was held in criminal contempt by the committee and the chairman himself for not coming forward, even though she had given sworn statements. Bondi hasn't even done that. So Bondi should be coming forward. Otherwise, she should face the same consequences that Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton did, which is criminal contempt.
In the Clinton example, which I think is the right parallel for y'all to be talking about here, there were multiple dates that were thrown out. It was like weeks and weeks of negotiation, certainly not as many weeks as Democrats would have liked to allow them. But there is precedent for going back and forth to try to get people to come to Congress for a deposition. But it sounds like not even those negotiations are happening.
Well, Pam Bondi is saying she is not going to come at all because she's no longer an attorney general. So she's projecting to us that she has no intention of ever talking to us under oath anymore because she's no longer AG.
So then how do you enforce the subpoena that does very much still exist, especially when you've got at least one Republican member saying, no, I would very much like this to happen?
Well, this was a Republican motion to have her subpoenaed, right? And so the Republicans should join Democrats in holding criminal sanctions against her. I will say, if you hold someone in criminal contempt, that gets referred to the Department of Justice, right? And so that'll be the tricky part about this is it's almost like a loophole in the Constitution. Who's going to enforce a criminal, sanctions for not applying to a subpoena? And that's going to be something that we have to look into next year as well. We're in the majority. Certainly, we're going to have people like Pam Bondi come testify and tell us what they know. But if the Department of Justice is ignoring our criminal sanctions and for our subpoenas that aren't followed, then that's a big problem.
That is a big problem. And I think it also sort of represents the circular nature of why this particular subpoena might be so hard to enforce. But I do think that there's an interesting parallel effort between the way that Bondi is completely stonewalling and Howard Lutnick, the current Commerce Secretary, has volunteered to come in. It kind of sounded like he would have faced a subpoena anyway, so that might be beating you guys to the punch. But what might that hearing look like? When do we expect it? All of those.
Well, Howard Lutnick has been inconsistent, right? He said one thing and then said another. And so we want to know why he's in the files, or what he's doing, what exactly his relationship was with Jeffrey Epstein. And he has an opportunity to come clean and tell us what he knows.
And then you also have Bill Gates coming up as well. I mean, these are some high-profile names, I think, and I wonder if the American public is looking at them on a calendar and saying, okay, like, what is the hope that you get out of all of these people?
Well, right now, there's 2.5 million files that still haven't been released, right? And so there's people who want to know what happened. Even the survivors want to know, okay, what's going on? Why aren't these being released yet? And so while we wait, we have to just talk to people who we need to talk to or want to talk to do our investigation. Eventually, those files will come out, whether it's under this president or another president. But we're going to find out what's missing and try to piece it all together.
So as you are working on that part of your job on the Oversight Committee, there's also what's happening in Congress writ large, which is two members taking themselves out of Congress, Swalwell and Gonzalez, both of them accused of pretty dark things, especially in the case of Eric Swalwell. I wonder if you can talk about the mood right now among your colleagues as you've seen both of these men say, I'm leaving. They knew that there was an expulsion vote on the horizon, but just talk about the mood and the reaction to what we've heard over the course of the last few days.
Well, I serve on the ethics committee, and I'll say it's been a very, very busy Congress for us. And that's really unfortunate. But the reality is, if you have an affair with a staffer, we have very clear rules that say that you should be expelled from Congress. And that rule is in place for a reason. And so we have not one but two members potentially breaking that rule. So I think it's the right thing for them to resign, because what we often find is when we investigate someone for one thing, then many other things come up as well. And all of that would have come out through our investigation. So, they're resigning, but, it really undermines trust in Congress generally when you have members who are in very public scandals like this. And our job on the ethics committee is to try to restore that trust.
But now that they've resigned, don't the investigations from an ethics perspective go away?
They do. Now, from a criminal perspective, obviously, prosecutors like the one in Manhattan can do whatever they need to do. But from an ethics perspective, they're no longer in our jurisdiction.
When Kate Santelise was on just a little bit before you, we were talking about the other two ethics investigations that might lead to future departures from Congress, specifically two members from Florida, Democratic Congresswoman Cher Phyllis McCormick, and then Corey Mills, Republican from Florida. Can you just talk about the timeline? I know you can't talk about the investigation, but can you speak to the timeline of when we might see the Ethics Committee take a next step there?
Yeah, it's a good question. Since I'm leading the Mills investigation, I can't talk about that. But on Cher Phyllis McCormick, her, for lack of a better word, sentencing is April 21st. And so we already had a public hearing about the allegations, and the committee ultimately voted to charge her with almost all of the 26 counts she was charged with. And so the next step is to see what the consequences should be for her, whether expulsion is on the table.
Do you think she should be?
That's next week. I can't comment on that. But I will say that, the allegations are very serious, and so we're looking into what the consequence should be.
It's been, I think, a very tumultuous Congress, to say the least. You were at the center of so many various portions of it. So thank you for coming on and talking us through all of this. And again, we'll be looking to see when and if Pam Bondi ends up coming before your committee. Suhas Subramaniam, Democratic Congressman of Virginia, thank you.